the distinction between healthy and unnecessary responsibility. Immediately, what comes to my mind is, do you know what your values are? Do you know what your priorities are? And what the vision aligned with what matters to you? Because we talk about this often, the distinction between urgent and valuable. And when we touch on healthy responsibility and unnecessary responsibility, which transitions into stress, I think that's the first point that is applicable for everyone, is just getting clear on the distinction between urgent and what is big time valuable to you. So I don't know if there's no magical way to go about this, but as you become more organized and focused and clear on what matters to you, doing this through essentially your lifestyle, you just come to a point where some things start to get questioned. And I started to wonder in my life, like what is this activity doing for me? What am I doing when I go hang out with friends at a bar or something of that nature? And that's just an easy example. But to realize that others are going to have certain expectations of you, and those expectations don't determine what is valuable to you. So I think that distinction is quite smooth, is to understand there's a difference between expectations, especially expectations placed upon you from others, and then what is actually aligned with your vision and your goals.
Yeah, so I feel it starts with clarity. So you need to have clarity why you want to do something, or if you want to do something. Is it aligned with your values? And um, this is also like, I mean, when you journal, when you know where do I want to go, what do I need to do to go there? And is the task or whatever is coming, is this aligned with my vision? Or isn't it? Is it maybe, like something that brings you further apart?
Well, I think when you say further apart, like that's sort of the distinction that everyone's going to have to make, making the sort of realization, because as expectations are placed on us from the outside, it might feel as if you're supposed to do something. But then when you mix that with the clarity on what is valuable to you, there begins to become a friction point where something that isn't necessarily valuable for your vision is kind of in a way being forced. And then we have to key in onto that word forced, because whenever something feels forced, whether it's a relationship, a career, a conversation, anything that is forced and pressured, it's usually coming from a low frequency standpoint of desire and want, and again, egotistical expectations that are not exactly aligned with the truth, which is you and I and everyone listening is exactly where they're meant to be. So, kind of working through the main distinction here is external pressure versus the internal compass, the internal guide. And I think the a main point is learning how to balance that. Because if you just go all internal, I don't necessarily think that's right. You're straying too far to one extreme. But if you're pure people pleasing and just trying to fit in, wearing a mask, that's not it either.
Yeah, I feel it's a balance. So at the same time, being yourself, but also, of course, like fulfilling some outside expectation to an extent if it's aligned with you. And so the feedback we get is when we do something or want to do something, there's a certain feeling, as you said. And there's this certain friction or this feeling of, oh, I really don't want to do this. And this is a sign, like the subconscious is telling you there is something to unravel. What it is like individual in each situation. But it can mean like building up the courage and setting boundaries and saying, no, I don't want to do this, or this is not aligned with who I am or with where I want to go.
The idea of not wanting to do something is an interesting place because there's part of me which has not wanted to do things which I know would be beneficial to me in the big picture, and the not wanting to do something that I know is healthy comes from a place of lack, a place of usually just overthinking and this anxiousness, which comes from not diving right into acting. And it's easier to say, like, to act than to actually push through your internal resistance when it's there for an action, especially one that you know is healthy for you. And so you mentioned courage, and that's where the courage comes up to sort of realize on the other side of what you're most scared of is usually something that's going to strengthen you, build you, make you more developed, and get you into a better place in the big picture. So our minds, there's friction around that idea because there's fear and there is limitations that we have placed upon ourselves, false limitations that have to be recognized and broken through because it's the glass ceiling. So having that courage is like, what do you do to realize in that moment that this thing which you have resistance toward is actually healthy? And I just think that quote is powerful. On the other side of what you're most scared of is usually what's going to propel you forward. Like something about it just feels right.
Yeah, and this is such a good point. And it's nuanced. So you can, if there's something you don't want to do, but it's healthy for you and outside your comfort zone, this is a different feeling than you don't want to do it because it's not aligned with you. And this is a subtle nuance. And I feel how to detect this, I think it's just to feel and to get the experience. So, you know, when you are in situations like this, just feeling inside what's going on. And then you are getting better, or you train yourself to detect those subtle nuances.
Right. To know what's aligned with you versus what is an outward pressure from someone else's expectations. And sometimes outward pressure can actually be aligned with you, but just in terms of probabilities and likelihoods, I would say that usually when someone is applying external pressure to you, usually it is similar to a force which is unhealthy because it's not natural. And that's that's that main distinction is learning how to feel what you're naturally curious about, what pulls you versus what is pushing you. And of course, push and pull is healthy, but um see, more often than not, the push is an unhealthy force. That being said, there will be times where someone is pushing you externally that they are aligned with you. But just in terms of likelihoods and probabilities, for the most part, that's not going to be the case. You are going to be the one internally who, more often than not, knows what feels right, what is actually pulling you versus being pushed externally.
Yeah, and I feel detecting those feelings can be trained. So when you have like relatively harmless situations, then you can just try it out and see, oh, when I move out of my comfort zone, although I didn't want to do it, how do I feel afterwards? So take cold showers, for instance. That's not something everyone is keen on, but once you try, you're like, oh, this is fun and feel much better. And then, of course, like situations where someone is forcing you to do something. And then again, when it's harmless and you can try it out and then you feel bad afterwards or low energy, then this was a sign of, oh, this wasn't aligned. So I feel this is a trainable skill. Yeah, that can be trained.
Yeah, the reps, without putting in the reps to get the feedback, then we can't talk about any of this. So it's not that it's the end of the world if you feel external pressure. I think the practical takeaway is just to notice that that is what it is, and then to guide your future decision making process through that lens of understanding, yeah, this is sort of a force. This is a external pressure that I don't necessarily have to fold to. um like, you can acknowledge it, you can make the force feel heard and understood without caving on your values, without um choosing incorrect priorities. um so I think that's sort of the practical takeaway, is simply, there's no magic pill, it's not instant, but just to notice the feedback. What are you feeling after blank decision? Is the decision reversible, irreversible? How how powerful is that decision? Because that's going to call for a certain degree of feedback and reflection on that decision. If it's low value, if it's reversible, if it's not a big choice, then you don't have to so deeply reflect. Maybe just journal about it once, twice, a couple of times, and get some understanding of what's going on there. So if you like this, all I would ask, just drop a like, share it with someone whom you know is interested in this sort of conversation. And if you're looking to create high energy, reduce stress, reduce anxiety, become more disciplined, just to level up and get to your goals as soon as possible, I'll have a link in description. You can either shoot me a DM on Twitter or just schedule a free breakthrough game plan session where essentially we're just going to give you as much valuable as possible. Create your vision, go take some practical steps through the crystal clear vision that we create. And yeah, that's what I got for you. And is there anything else that you would like to say?
I think this sums it up. And I mean, observation and awareness, that's where it all starts.
Yeah, reflection, awareness, just noticing. You can't improve anything that you're not willing to admit could be better. So have a great day.